Hey everybody, John Kublank here, and we have another exciting episode of Off the Cuff, all things healthcare. And if you had the opportunity to rub a lamp and a genie popped out, one of your wishes of the three has to be to have a co-host like Arlene Maxim, and she is here every Wednesday with me, and I'm blessed to be here. Arlene, how are you?
I'm good, John. Thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And I'm excited about this episode. Who do we have today?
Yeah, we have John McGuire with us, and John McGuire is a colleague of mine. I've met John a couple years ago in working with Seniors Home Services, and John is the CEO of Zing Performance. And for those of you who don't know what Zing Performance is, you need to listen very carefully because it can probably change your life in one way or another. I had not the opportunity, the misfortune of having a mom with severe dementia. Had I known about Zing Performance, it probably would not have gotten to the point where it did get with what she actually expired from. But nevertheless, it is a life-changing opportunity to get to meet John's team and work with Zing Performance and see the spectacular results. I actually had two family members who took part in the program. One was a grandson, 14 years old, who, when they started, he could not multiply 2 times 4. He could not multiply single digits within several weeks. Well, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks, and I don't know if I'm correct on that, but he was able to multiply 4-digit calculations. I have a daughter who was unable to lean back to have dental work done or even have her hair shampooed. John was gracious enough to help me put her on Zing. And within a matter of weeks, she was able to perform that small activity. And that may not seem like a lot to some folks, but she had such severe anxiety with just that movement that it was incapacitating for her. So I am personally thankful to John and his team for helping a couple of my family members. But we have so much to talk about because John has touched the lives of not only folks with dementia, but folks like I'm talking about, children with dyslexia, anxiety. Just before we came on, we were talking about his activities with golfers and football players at the so I'm happy to introduce John McGuire. Again, he's the CEO of Zing Performance. Zing Performance has been around for about 25 years, and John's going to tell us all about it, what they do, how they got started, and exactly what we can expect out of having someone set up with sessions with Zing. John, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, John, thank you.
Well, listen, it's a pleasure to be invited, and I thank you for this opportunity. And John, maybe next time I can get the same introduction that you provided to Arlene in that way.
She's my girl.
Beautifully done and well-deserved by Arlene for sure. And, for me, it's a thrill over the last 3.5 years to globally run Zing Performance because it's a way for one of the first times in my career where I'm able to actually merge what I call my business life and my personal life. And meaning that I've dealt with a number of things that Zing Performance helps with in the child welfare system, with foster care kids that we've had in our home, and as well as those who we adopted, and a charity that we started in Northeast Florida. So it's very meaningful to me to see the benefits of running a company that has such an impact. And I'm thrilled, with some of the work that we've done with Arlene and others, at least in the aging population sector. But let me kind of share a little bit of the backstory, and I won't take a long time for this, but I think it's kind of nice to understand that the company was founded on principles, and quite honestly, it was founded on a father who had struggles with his daughter. And for me, when companies start off that way, I think it's done for the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a pure capitalist, and I'm a business guy. But when you find a problem, particularly when it's a family member and that close, and it's gut wrenching to the point where you've got to do something about it. That's what happened here. And a gentleman in the UK, a successful businessman in the UK, in fact, believe it or not, he invented the flame retardant paint for commercial buildings. And so he was enormously successful with that. He also owns one of the top private schools in all of the UK. Just a wonderful man and a tremendous researcher, extremely knowledgeable. His oldest daughter, he has 4 children, and his oldest daughter, like I said, about 26 years ago, struggled with dyslexia. And while he had the means to support her in a lot of different ways through different therapies, different medications, a host of things that were available, at least at that point in time, nothing really seemed to work, quite honestly. Or if it did, it was short lived, or it had other side effects, and so forth. And where he drew the line in the sand was that his oldest daughter, because she got so depressed from it and the struggle was so real, that she tried to take her own life. And at that stage, as a father, he realized that he can no longer operate his business, that it was in his best interest, his daughters and his families, to sell that business and put his resources, money, education to work by finding the root cause of dyslexia. What is the cause? How do we really, what's out there? What's the real science behind here? So what he did was he actually reached out to a lot of folks at Harvard in the US, professors, several professors and doctors in the UK, and realized that the root cause of the problem lies in an underdeveloped cerebellum. Now, a lot of us may not know where the cerebellum is or what part of the brain is the cerebellum. It's one of the smallest parts in the back of the head by the brainstem. And what's unique about the cerebellum is that, well, 26 years ago, everybody just thought it was for balance and coordination only. But what we've learned over time, in fact, even 26 years ago, a professor who the founder worked with was Dr. Jeremy Schwarman. And Dr. Jeremy Schwarman actually published a series of papers 25 years ago on why the cerebellum is way more important than just balance and coordination. In fact, he called it the brain within the brain, or the junction box of the brain. And what was interesting is that was 26 years ago, and science has really caught up to what all of these folks knew back then. So there were a host of scientists and professors in America, a host of scientists and professors in the UK that he brought together, did a lot of research, went after everybody he could to learn. And that's when they realized that the cerebellum was the cause, or at least the focus area that he wanted to find his care plan or his methodology or program that would help others. And so what he did from there was he created clinics. He started off with a handful or so around the UK so he can bring people in and test the theories on the cerebellum and a variety of other things. So let me talk a little bit about what Zing does, and then I'll finish that beginning story.
Sure.
Zing develops programs that are tailored, coordinated exercises that stimulate cerebellum development, which helps the cause of cognitive limitations. So we're creating neuroplasticity in a sense, and that's really creating the brain to be able to change and adapt. And it's the combination of these type of cerebellum stimulation exercise. And keep in mind, I know Arlene knows this, but John and the listeners, when I say exercises, I don't mean a treadmill or weightlifting. These are vestibular type exercises that were designed in all of his clinics to make sure that we were designing the right exercises and movement that was challenging the cerebellum. Because science has shown, and there's been an enormous amount of publications on this, is that when you can combine exercises and stimulation, it's been shown to generate new stem cells in the cerebellum, which results in increased mental capacity, processing speed, a host of other things. And so it allows us to really focus on helping those with dyslexia, ADHD, reading, anxiety, stress, emotional control, about 8 cognitive areas. And that if you do these tailored coordinated exercises each day for about 5 to 7 minutes, you'll be able to, in 3 weeks' time, as Arlene's family members, you'll start to see some cognitive changes where things begin to automate. It's just like when I walked into this office that the school was nice enough to allow me to use today. I didn't have to think about where the chair was and how to sit down, that became automated to me, right? It's just like when all of us, when we were maybe age 7, learned to ride a bicycle. We had to work at it, some of us a week, some of us longer. But when we got 16 years old, we put the bike in the garage because we started to drive a car, right? Maybe the bike's been sitting in the garage for 10, 15, 20 years, but we can still go in the garage and ride it. That's the cerebellum. So when you can create this kind of stimulation and those kind of movements and automate the processes, take all of the jumbled stuff that we deal with in the front of the brain and automate it to the cerebellum, that's really opening up our processing speed, our executive function, and so on. And so what we've done was, over the last several years, was we've harnessed everything that they've learned over 20 years in clinics, and we built an online program that focus on specific areas where we know we can successfully create cognitive performance, neuroplasticity, and that's with athletes. So if you're a professional athlete or a little boy playing baseball, we have a fitness athlete program, which is called Sarah Fit. We then have Sarah Skills, which is one we'll talk about a lot today, I believe, but that's for kids age 7 to the aging population of 100 or more. And then we have Sarah Mind, which is a program that's designed to increase your cognitive performance, but also reduce stress and anxiety, which is key, particularly when, Arlene mentioned dementia. Building your cognitive performance and reducing anxiety stress is a key role in minimizing or reducing the acceleration of dementia. So that's an important part. And then lastly, we have a program that we partnered with Dr. Ned Hollowell on. And some of you may not know who Dr. Ned is. Some of you may. But Dr. Ned Hollowell is a Harvard gentleman, doctor, who actually is arguably the world's leading authority in ADHD. So we work a lot with Dr. Ned and a number of different people throughout the world on ADHD. And so when you do these exercises each day, you're creating that, that neuroplasticity, stimulating, and it's 5-7 minutes a day. Now, after each session, you will be asked whether the exercise itself was effortless or easy or manageable or hard. And by doing that, your customized program is going to keep adapting each day to fill the needs that your brain needs. So in other words, if it's too easy, it's not going to stimulate the cerebellum. If it's too hard, it's not going to be good on the individual. So to find that equal medium, the program will keep adjusting, which will allow for an enormous amount of opportunity to increase a variety of cognitive areas. And when I say cognitive performance, the areas that we focus on a great deal is, memory recall, working memory, auditory and visual working memory, concentration, response time, balance and coordination, and so forth. And these are all very, very strong things. And within the program also is not just the initial assessment, because when you first get on the program, you're going to take a cognitive assessment. Every 30 days, you're going to redo that assessment so you can actually track your performances and see how well you're increasing in those areas. You will also obviously notice the difference, and so will your counterparts or family members. They'll start to see how things become easier. You'll start to read more, whether you liked to read before or you didn't, things of that nature. So you'll certainly pick up on a whole host of things. And quite frankly, it's rather simplistic, but enormously backed by science and a 25-year history. What's interesting, John, is in 2002, when he was doing this with dyslexia, 60 Minutes went over there and did a whole 30-minute show on following 3 different individuals in different parts of the UK with dyslexia before and after, and the outcome was quite enormous. So it does go back far, and what we have done is really modernize it, make it available through a mobile phone or a tablet, and taking everything that they've done in hundreds and hundreds of clinics and scaling it in a way where it's more affordable, more accessible, and take all that data and information and building a top-tiered program that targets the specific needs of the individuals. I hope I didn't take up too much time.
No, that was perfect. There's a lot.
Like I'm hogging the show.
The one I want to jump into, I think So much in trauma situations, anxiety situations exacerbate the ADHDs, the ODDs,
Oh,
these,
sure.
mental health
Yep.
sort of situations. Um,
Yes.
but
100%.
yeah, but that also, then when we're talking about the senior population, then that really
Mhm.
starts to affect your physical health immediately, right? So,
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm happy to see in our industry is that we are, and it's globally, that we are looking at non-traditional clinical ways to take care of the actual physical body. It's more than just putting a Band-Aid on it, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right on stress and anxiety, but couple that with the cognitive limitations of this of a senior. So when we can successfully increase their working memory, their concentration, their response time, their balance and coordination, their memory recall, everything I just said there helps maintain their independence, help keeps them out of the hospital. When your response time is increased dramatically, your balance and coordination is increased dramatically, your memory recall, all of these things that get increased in this program that they can do right at their home, at their convenience at any point in time, really creates an enormously successful outcome for them. And it's we all know, I think you all know better than I do, that a lot of times their independence is it's there's risk there if they have falls and they wind up in the hospital, or they lose some memory recall and things of that nature. So this is just a very rewarding program for them to participate in. And you know what? The exercises aren't technically cardiac or cardiology in nature, but they are doing movements. Some hopping, some standing on one leg, some eye tracking mechanisms. There's a variety of different things based on their assessments. So let's count the movement part of it as well, which is also not a bad thing. So there's a host of things that really come in the program that make it enormously beneficial, because one, they can do it in the convenience of their home whenever they want throughout the day, as long as they continue to do one session a day. They're able to sort of track all their cognitive performance and really see where they are individually, as also how they compare to the rest of the database. And honestly, we have significant results out of a peer-reviewed study we just did last year on 886 individuals. The balance and coordination increased by 76%. The memory
Wow.
recall increased by 64%. We're all of these areas, we had a minimum of 50 to 55% increase after 3 months of utilizing the program. Now they can stay on it longer if they want. In fact, in the senior program, we give them access for a year, because we want them to take the first 90 days, which is what we call a boot camp, because that's when they're going to start to see significant changes in all those areas of cognition. And in 3 weeks, they'll start to see some, but at 3 months is when it becomes hardwired in the cerebellum. So not only are you changing the cognitive performance of these, it's becoming hardwired, like we talked about at the beginning here, where things are automated, things are much, much easier, and their mental capacity is much greater. But many stay on afterwards. So we give seniors access to it for 12 months. And that way, once they're done for 90 days, they can continue doing it every day or a few times a week, because they'll still get improvement. Um, but majority of that is that during that 90-day process.
Yes.
How is this paid, John? Who pays for
I'm sorry?
this? How is this paid?
Yeah, so there's two ways as of right now. We obviously, there's a fee for service where an individual can just sign up right on our site for the program that's the best one for them. But we have recently gotten through Medicare. So we have gotten credentialed, licensed, reimbursable, everything. The program for the aging population is now Medicare approved. We're under Part B. We actually looking to credential a few weeks ago with Advantage plans, with Aetna, United, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we also filed Medicaid, because there's a number of other potential areas that we want to focus on for that. But it's very affordable, to be quite honest. I mean, we're not, we the reason why we developed our programs in the way that we have over the last 3 years was because we wanted that scalability. We wanted the affordability. We wanted all those things where I can come to a school and onboard 100 kids, and it's not difficult, and it's very affordable for the school or the parents. And, for seniors to spend $500, $600, $700, $900 on a program that will ultimately, extend their independence, keep their mental freshness going, keep them out of the hospital. There's a huge, element to that. So, but, Medicare, I think, was a big move for us and a big opportunity. And we hope to expand on that as we increase awareness and start working with a number of different organizations.
So Medicare Part B covers this. So, for instance,
Correct.
if we have a lot of home care agencies that listen to this broadcast.
Yep.
So as they are under care under Part A for home health, then they would
Yep.
still be able to take advantage of what your program.
That's my understanding. I mean, I've hired. Listen, I spent the last year working to get this credentialed and done. I didn't know much about Medicare before then, so I did what every smart CEO should do: is hire people who do. And so I hired consulting firms, 2 different ones, because I wanted to make sure what one was telling me, the other one was also providing me the same results. So I hired 2 consulting firms, and I also hired a former top lawyer from Medicare who's in private practice now to represent my interests in this program and with Medicare. Because, there's only one way to do things like that, and that's the right way. But my understanding is that Medicare Part B can access that. And a majority that I'm seeing have Medicare Part B still. I see a shift where there's a lot more advantage plans. So that's why we shifted to try to get credentialed in that, which I'm hoping we'll have end of March, maybe early April, based on the time frame. I know we'll move quick, but technically sometimes they don't. So we're going to do the best we can to move that forward, because for me, my goal is just to make this available to as many as possible. And, because I think I think quite honestly, and this is obviously my biased opinion, but this is one of the single most easy things that an agency or an individual can do for themselves to keep their mental sharpness and to keep their response time and balance and coordination. And it's not strenuous. They don't have to deviate from their plans each day. They don't have to change diets. They don't have to take medications. They don't have to do any of those things. Just follow your customized plan each day, and you'll see significant changes. And now, don't get me wrong, if they're on medications, they can still do the program. That's not going to hinder them from being part of this, but it's very easy, even though there's an enormous amount of science and 25 years behind it. It's a simple approach to really maintain your cognitive strength.
And in the home care industry, we're going to something called value-based purchasing. Well, we are in value-based purchasing right now. And so one of the key things, and as you mentioned, is decreasing that rehospitalization rate. And you obviously are doing that. But the other things that I think folks don't necessarily think about is if we have patients who have cognitive deficits, they're not going to be able to have improvement for value-based purchasing purposes in learning how to take their medications correctly, learning how to do the exercises and make the changes they need to in dyspnea, and learning how to safely do their mobility activities in the home. All of this ties into cognition. And I think that if folks really start to think about how cognition is going to impact all of their value-based purchasing scores, it's going to make a big change in those home care companies promoting a program like Zing Performance. We have your phone number up here. We have your email. I would encourage every home care agency that's listening to give John an email and ask for more information. You can certainly call John Kublank or myself too. Our information is up there all the time, so we can answer questions related to this as well. But I want to make sure that they think about this and have a really good understanding of how that can really impact their value-based purchasing scores, because that's going to be so important next year. When that money is going to start either being taken away or being given over to somebody, competition that you may not have it. So I just think that we need to really be listening to this very carefully and understanding how how beneficial it can be to the organization itself, not just for the patients, but the organization's financial viability.
That was what I was
Yeah, I
going
mean,
to
those
ask
are excellent
John.
points.
Do y'all see any extra improvement, like 2+2=5, when you're doing group settings, or you have, like you said, you're at a school, you're signing up 100 kids, 120 kids or whatever, but now there know other people doing this program and they're talking about it. Maybe they stay more motivated. Do y'all see any sort of differentiation between larger groups or just a single individual signing up?
Yeah, I mean, well, I hope I understand your question right, but every individual's program is tailored and customized for them.
Sure.
So even though we're putting on 100+ children here, every one of their programs designed for them. So they're going to see variation of different program exercises and things of that nature, because based on their initial assessments that they take. So they're going to get a series of cognitive assessments as well as eye tracking assessments and things of that nature. And so, John, your scores in certain areas will probably be very different than Arlene's. And based on your assessment scores is how your program is designed and customized for yourself. Same with Arlene. Yeah. And it will continuously adapting each day. Now, in the classrooms these days, it's a little easier than when I was in a classroom or you guys were in a classroom. But John seems to be younger than us, Arlene. But it's these kids are working off of tablets, not textbooks anymore.
Right.
So, like today, we just met with the IT guy, and he blasted out the program to every one of their tablets. And so each kid with earpieces can do their own thing 5 to 7 minutes a day in the classrooms. And then when they're home on the weekends, the parents will kick in. But even if they don't do it on the weekends, I'll deny I ever said this. So you may want to block this portion out for any teachers that are listening. But they'll still have enormous impact because they'll still be 70-80% compliant if they lose the weekend. And really, that's what we're hoping for. Anywhere between 70 and 100% compliance is where you're going to get the most opportunity out of the program. In fact, there was a peer-reviewed study on the aging population in Nature magazine on our program. And it was, even though the individual seniors that participate in that weren't as enormously compliant, they still had tremendous results. And that was a peer-reviewed study entirely done without us in one of what we believe to be a top-tiered science publication. And we have a number of different schools. We work with a number of very top-tiered people in the world of science and behavioral health and so on. So this is supported by an enormous population that has a lot of background in this field.
Yeah. So I'm a foster and adoptive parent as well. And
no
I
kidding.
wanted to touch back on something that you had said in the beginning. When you look at trauma and you look at how we can address these areas, I think especially with children, we're talking about reduction in crime and these sort of decisions later on. The anxiety that kids go through in a school setting when they're not able to perform at level with their peers, it's a social enigma or what, it's definitely cast to the side. And I think there's a lot of studies that show, and there's no fault to teachers or coaches.
Oh, no, none whatsoever.
Humans, we get drawn to the kids that are high performers. And we give more time to high performance, which then now even pushes the issues even further behind. So I think now more than ever, the society is in need of a program like this that, again, is individualized for these kids or for these individuals, all anybody that can do it, but that is not going to alter or have to change their whole day. 5 to 7 minutes, that's easy.
No, and if I could, I'll take a few minutes because I'd like to explain the anxiety stress piece, because while the neuroplasticity and the cognitive portion is enormously important, in fact, we couldn't be successful in the stress and anxiety side if we didn't have that. And there's an enormous amount of publications. In fact, the New York Annals of Science just came out with a publication on how the cerebellum ties to EMDR as well as anxiety and stress. And for those of you on here who don't know what EMDR is, it's a form of therapy, if you want to call it, that was started maybe 30 years ago, where it was sort of designed to recreate REM sleep while you're awake with a psychiatrist or a therapist and so on, because the treatment would be to try and do sort of a reset, if you want to call it. I worked a lot
My
with
daughter went through
veterans and
that.
trauma. Yeah, well, and let me share. Well, then you're familiar with it, but let me share what we've done is we've made it what we believe way more scalable, way faster. Obviously, a far great less expensive, because when you're building neuroplasticity like we are in our programs, we're more or less readying the brain for this type of process. And where you're not really getting that in a traditional type EMDR program or so on. Now, what's enormously important about ours is that you can do our entire program on the app by yourself without any medication, talk therapy, discussing any triggers or the actual trauma itself or anything of that nature, which helps a great deal of teens and kids. But not only, it also helps adults and veterans, because in the traditional EMDR setting, most would have to see on average a trained person in that field somewhere between 9 and 12 patient visits. And the reason why it takes usually that many is because when you're, well, I guess it's essential to understand that where our approach with neuroplasticity is, we're working with the subconscious mind. When you're sitting with a psychiatrist or a therapist or a trained person, those interventions target the conscious mind, which, like I just talked about, it's talking about the triggers and the trauma and the events. And that's typically where side effects occur, or that's typically where they have to get more and more sessions, because it really becomes, it's bringing out all those issues, creating all those extra stress and anxiety and so on. And, in our events, it's with a coach at the very beginning, but it's really self-guided and offering, often recounting these events can lead to emotional distress, all these other things which don't occur with ours. So the underlying neuroscience of our technique suggests that we'll have very little or no side effects at all. And that's an important thing when you're dealing with stress and anxiety, particularly those who may have a severe trauma or other areas. And so, again, when it comes to the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious, is keep in mind the conscious, memory involves facts, figures, images, dates, numbers that we actually, we routinely think about. For example, recalling like Arlene's birthday or remembering the plot of a movie. The hippocampus is responsible for storing those memories during our deep sleep process. So during the night, in our deep sleep process is where we're storing those kind of items. The subconscious memory, which are actions like I talked about early on in this episode, where skills that we do without thought, active thought. Like I said, walking into this office that they provided to me, I didn't have to think about where their chair was or how to sit down or anything. That was a skill being done without active thought. And like, for instance, again, how to balance, drive a car, take each step. The cerebellum handles these automatic actions. It processes the array of things that we do subconsciously, like, converting sound waves into comprehensible thoughts. These memories are stored during our rapid eye movement sleep, which again is the EMDR process that we're recreating. For example, like if I go into a new supermarket and I'm looking for ice cream, which I traditionally do, and I'm not familiar with the location, I got to search the aisles, look at the numbers and all this other stuff. But if I was to go into that store again the next time, the cerebellum would kick in and automate some of that process and things of that nature. So when trauma, like you brought up, John, with foster kids and adopted kids, or any of us, trauma complicates this process of the conscious and the subconscious, right? So when the brain experiences an unpredictable event, right, it struggles to process and store it in a regular memory. Instead, it links the sensory details of the trauma to like the alarm system that many say is like a flight or fight or things of that nature. So when it creates that heightened alert of the sensories, it's exposes sensory details later. The brain may trigger or fight flight response and all these kind of things. So when the brain's alarm system is actually designed to protect us, so especially from life-threatening and other things of that nature. And so how our process works, it helps us to re-engage the traumatic memories in a controlled, safe setting by yourself, and where we mimic the rapid eye movements, just like in REM sleep. And we educate the person on how to take the original um, traumatic experience, which resulted in alarm response, and understand, hey, what happened is no longer a threat. So one of the biggest things to take from that is what trauma is because we don't know the outcome, is what it really boils down to. It could be whether you're a child or a veteran or a business person or a teacher, or any of us suffer from stress and anxiety a number of different ways, or even PTSD. I mean, sometimes your stress and anxiety can create PTSD. But the fact is very simple, is when you don't know the outcome of the event is why we feel the way we do with trauma, stress, and anxiety. So what we do, building the neuroplasticity and our version of bilateral stimulation or bilateral processing and creating that self EMDR, is allowing our brain to understand the fact that, hey, we may not know the outcome, but it's okay and I'm safe type of approach. And when you couple that, no trigger, no talk therapy, no approach, along with neuroplasticity, it happens like that. In fact, what happens normally is we average 2 of our bilateral processing or self EMDR sessions on your own, and you can't even conjure up those thoughts anymore of how you felt. And how that simply works is on the program, when you're doing your everyday exercises after day 10. So you've got to be on the program doing the neuroplasticity for 10 days to ready the brain. At that point in time, the self EMDR button will open up on your phone or tablet. That will allow you to do a tutorial, but more importantly, you schedule right on the app a time to talk with one of our coaches. And listen, again, we're not therapists. We're trained in what we do, but the goal is just to walk you through using the self EMDR on your own. Because we know that if we do that session with you first time, you're going to have enormously successful outcomes. And the coach will say, John, you know what, you did wonderful. This went really well with you today. They'll turn on the back office switch and it will open up on your phone for you to utilize at any point in time when you feel like you need it. Now, if the coach seems to think, well, John, this went well, but I would feel a little better if you and I did another one, they'll tell you, you'll schedule it, and go on to the second one. But we are averaging, I don't know how you average 2.5, but we're averaging 2.5 sessions where there's a reset. And this, honestly, I did this myself. And I couldn't even do it the first couple of years because I was too focused on running the company and what I liked and didn't like about how certain look or how we worded something. Until I got to the point where I could do it myself. It was unbelievable, where I can honestly sit here today and tell you that it was a specific stress that I was dealing with, and it didn't go away. The circumstance in life still is there, but I can't conjure up any of those feelings anymore that you get when your stomach and your head and your tenseness, or however a person feels with their anxiety or stress. So it's enormously impactful. That one helps kids in school, helps adults and business people, truly helps seniors a great deal. Athletes, golfers, you no longer have the yips because you're afraid of a bunker or something of that nature, which we do a lot of. So it does. So when you build out neuroplasticity, increase executive function, mental capacity, and remove the stress and anxiety, you're undergoing powerful things with your brain that you never understood that you could have.
Well, and I think, especially with our aging population, you see similarities with younger children as well. And I take for my daughter, when she was going through therapy, when she was younger, it was very difficult to get her to participate.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
She was very young, right? Maybe around that eight years old ish.
Yeah.
But she was quiet. It was hers is a freeze mentality. She doesn't fight or flight. She freezes.
Yep.
And we would go, and I think my ex-wife and I, we had to spend so much time, so much energy. We both had to be there. It was like 45 minutes away from our house. Yeah, take it. We were there all the time. I think we did it for like 12 weeks or whatever. And I still left with this.
That fits right into what I was just saying.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with, and I love the Zing, it's like self-directed. It's more comfortable of an environment to get stuff done. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And that it's an important part. And kids are more plastic than us. As we get older, we don't have as much plasticity. Kids have a great deal of neuroplasticity when they're little. In fact, you go back, you can look at, if you really want to get very sciencey, you can go back and look on how the cerebellum could even go as far back to when we were infants and we, skipped crawling and went from just sitting up to pulling up on the couch. Actually missing crawling underdevelops the cerebellum. So and I know that sounds a bit much going back that far and talking about, but it's not me. It's pure science that has been repeated multiple times. So but with kids, listen, my wife and I have had 63 foster care kids in our home over 13 years. And we adopted the last two who were the most traumatic out of all 60 some odd. And so I understand that. And it's no different for any of us. And it's no different for a senior, and it's no different for an athlete. We all struggle with this one way or another. And what's really sad is it's gotten worse. I think social media has had a really tough go at kids. Smartphones and social media has been really tough for kids and stress, anxiety, and trauma. COVID, again, they got pulled out of their element from their friends. And it's not just me. You can see everywhere that all these things have a direct result to where we are. And when you read the data, there's about 85 kids committing suicide a day. 85 from stress, anxiety, and other things like that. And so it needs to be addressed, and it needs to have something that's focused on the root cause. There's a lot of good things out there. I believe we're one of them that make it very scalable and easy for them because of some of the things I mentioned earlier. It's no different whether it's your 8-year-old or 48-year-old. Nobody likes to talk about those things to others.
And especially like really older adults too. It's like, I'm not talking to you. You don't know me.
Yep. Yeah. And for the aging population, when you're building the cognitive performance and you're focused with anxiety and stress, it's going to help them a great deal. With slowing down dementia, with staying out of the hospital. In fact, I think Arlene mentioned early on in the show here that, based on our studies, we found that our Skills program for the aging reduces falls by 40%. And that's an average cost savings of around $12,000 an individual, because all the data that I read from CMS and CDC, that the average emergency room fall is about a $30,000 cost. Yeah. And so that's a significant savings. And if you're an agency and, you see this opportunity to keep them out of the hospital and keep those costs, I mean, you should really be taking a look at some things like that. I'm not a very good salesperson. I did this for the same reason why the founder did, was because I saw the need in the child welfare system. I'm heavily involved in functional medicine, genetics, diagnostics, and nutritional as well. And I see it ties all together. Because it's mental health also has a direct correlation to gut health and other related fields. So for me, it was an extension of where I wanted to go as a person and not just a business. So that's where I see the needs.
And where do you see Zing Performance going next? You have, is it building upon what you have? Is it expanding the types of programs you can offer? What's on the roadmap?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, we built out the model to help a lot of different categories. As far as like expansion and things of that nature, I mean, my biggest goal is to keep improving upon the client or patient journey. So learning from them. So we want to be more proactive with providing them information like weekly progress reports, encouragement words, our folks reaching out just with live phone calls and interaction. And, but there's a lot of potential with partnering with business to business strategic partnerships.
Mhm.
I don't think we're working with particularly, and I don't think John Kemp will mind, but there's an organization in Alabama called Lakeshore. They are the world's authority on the Paralympics and Special Olympics. They were founded out of the University of Alabama in the 20s. They have an incredible team of people and facilities in Alabama, like 40 acres, where the rugby's teams train, the Paralympics, everyone in that. So what John Kemp, the CEO, who's just an absolute tremendous man, I've spent a lot of time the last few weeks, is he's asked me to work with his experts to develop where we can be all inclusive to help individuals with this that can't stand on one leg or hop. And so I love that element of it. So I can work with some of the world's leading best people and authorities in that realm, because my adopted son has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. So he's in a wheelchair. So again, that's my business and personal life that seems to be merging for me continuously. So to meet John and his team and to have that kind of support and backing is tremendous. So things of that nature, I really see as potential. I really see the school system as a huge need. And when we can improve reading, we can improve math, we can improve all their education and simplify things. But there's bureaucracy like anything else that you have to work through, but the timing seems to be right. So for me, there's a lot more opportunities in corporate benefits, in healthcare plans and other things like that, because for the first time, like the guide program with CMS, I don't know if it's the first time, but there's not a lot of times where they try to focus on preventative. So I think they're heading in the right direction with that, and we certainly can be a part of that. Now, I'm not an expert in guide or CMS. I'm trying to learn, and I'm looking for partners on that. And there are some that are talking to us to utilize us as one of those interventions within their guide program. So there are lots of things we'd like to tap into. And then there's, I want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity, because I want to build the company enough to where if someone can't afford it, they're going to get it. And so that's the approach I've taken from day one. It's why I fought for insurance, because I saw the huge need for the aging population, but it's tough for them. And so this is why we went that route. And my whole thing is to make sure everyone gets this to the point where they don't have to deal with some of the struggles.
One of the things you mentioned earlier about the suicide rate for young people, but we also have a really high suicide rate of veterans. And I
Yeah,
know that
huge.
you've worked
Too
with
many.
veterans in the past, and or not in the past, but you're working with them now. And maybe you
Yes.
can speak to what results you've had with those folks.
Yeah, you know what, this is another near and dear area for me, and I would love to help every veteran. And quite honestly, I mean, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, where it's the world headquarters, or at least the U.S. headquarters for Wounded Warriors Project.
Oh,
And every single weekend, or at least once or twice a month, I hear how they're not getting the help that they need. They don't have enough people. They can't get funding, or more or less, there's a 2-year waiting list, and we're a solution for that. They can do it all at their home and benefit. And so veterans, to me, we've had great success because we've done a number of different trials with veterans, and we've had enormous success with them. We worked with a couple other organizations, which I'll keep private, I guess, for now, but that we've worked with their veterans in specific reasons, and had wonderful outcomes with them. So I certainly would love to expand much greater. I'm really kind of thrilled about the fact that I have a call tomorrow with an organization of 400 and something Navy SEALs. So
oh, wow.
I'm looking forward to that, because that's a great step in the right direction with some really top tiered guys that either were SEALs in the past, part of this brotherhood, or are existing ones where they're trying to help each other, and because there has to be a life after that kind of service. So veterans is an area that's huge, Arlene, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's so important to me. And if I can help tons of those, I would love to. I wish Wounded Warriors would reach out, honestly.
What I find interesting about Zing Performance, and I read a book called Peak Mind, which I highly encourage. If you haven't read it, I can send it to Arlene to send to you. But the really idea here is that if you want to improve anything, you got to work at it first, right? And so I think, if you're not doing the right thing, it's not going to work. But it's like a lot of times taking that first step, it's like, man, I want to improve, or I want to see my child improve, but where do I go? It's like, I can go work out at the gym, to get bigger muscles, but where do I work out my brain? And that is so important, or you're not going to be as developed. And so I think it's just interesting that Zing is doing that exact thing.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head too, and it's why medication's so popular, because somebody rather just up a pill than do a 5 to 7 minute exercise each day. But that's, sometimes in the medication's the first line of defense. And I'm not here to say there's anything wrong with it, but in ADHD and all these other areas, there's massive amounts of medication going out there. Some have side effects, some don't. I mean, listen, if it works for you, that's fantastic. And I know sometimes that's a trial and you got to find the right one and the right dosage and ones that don't cause side effects. And even now there's shortages, a lot of that worldwide. And so we are competing with that mentality of, because it works and it's easy to do. Now, quick. And it works, and I'm, that's wonderful for those people. And again, that's more power to them. They got to do what's best for them. And I'm not against it in any way, shape, or form. It's just, you can be on the medication while you're doing this. So strengthening the core and the root cause while you're even doing medication. And then you can kind of see where it goes from there. I'm not ever going to be the one to tell someone to stop medication or you shouldn't be doing this, because I know there's a place for it for a lot of individuals.
But I'll be bold here, because this is my show and I can, and I'm not running an amazing organization like yours. But how is it an ideal situation for you to just accept that, I'm taking this medication for the rest of my life to survive, right? The only way I can go is like, I have to take this medication. And we just accept that as what we can do, like we just accept it. I know my daughter, one of her biggest complaints is, I want to take less meds.
That's right. Yeah. And listen, I work with some of the top people in these fields, and it, in a lot of ways, it's the first line of defense. It works well with them. It's a process to get there. But they'll also tell me that 90% of the people that come to them are looking for something outside of medication. So it's just kind of one of those struggles where awareness, I think, is the most important thing. And the other thing too, and all due respect to parents who have children with ADHD or veterans or all this other stuff. And I don't mean this in any way, shape as arrogance, but a lot of times your truths are competing with other people's lies. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of stuff out there about how it will help and how we'll do this, do that. And it's a very, very competitive area where there's a lot of hope. And when people have hope and spend time and money into something, but don't see an outcome, when they finally get to you or another good alternative, even if it's not Zing, there's lots of good alternatives out there. They're hesitant because of the fact that they've spent money, they spent time, and they haven't seen the results. I've seen that a lot with ADHD parents. They've done all these different things, and all of a sudden you're going to tell us to do these exercises each day and it's going to change. So, and I mean this with the utmost respect. I feel for them because I've had kids like that. I know that. And that's a tough barrier to overcome because you've been burned. You really have to educate that process. And so for me, I want to even start a program that's free for failed. So if a parent comes to me with a kid where they spent lots of money on a program that didn't help their ADHD, show me that and you can have my program. Because for me, it's again, help those who nobody wants, and you'll get the people that everybody wants.
That's right.
And that's the philosophy that I take in my life, my personal life, and my business life. And I think that's, I feel bad for those parents and those individuals. It's sad. Yeah. We have 100% guarantee for those type of programs. We don't, if they don't see results, you can have.
But you were talking about Medicaid earlier. I would have to imagine the socioeconomic situations have a huge effect on trauma, ODD, MDD, ADHD, these sort of things. And so I love to hear that you're, from day one, or at least day one with us, you're like, look, man, we want to get it into your hands because truthfully, it's better for the society. Like if we're going to go, we talked about.
We can save Medicare billions of dollars.
Yeah, it's good for the whole economy and for our community and for everybody to have a little bit more neuroplasticity. Will make the world a better place.
So when you go on, here's if for your listeners and even for you, John, I'm not sure if I shared this with you, Arlene, but if you go to YouTube, search the backwards bicycle. The backwards bicycle. This has no correlation with us, but this is a gentleman in Australia whose buddies took his bicycle from him, and his buddies own a welding shop, and they took his bicycle from him and they welded it to where when he steered to the right, it actually went to the left. And this is a true story. Again, we don't know him at all, but I reference this because it really shows the strength of the cerebellum and neuroplasticity. It took him months to learn how to ride it that way, which is the cerebellum. And he actually, even though he's not a scientist, he's a regular guy, he starts to talk about neuroplasticity in this. But what was really cool was he rode it like that for a year. And then when he went to ride it a normal bike that actually went to the right when you steered to the right, he couldn't do it at first. It took about 10, 15 minutes. And then boom, that's the cerebellum and neuroplasticity. So it's really fun to watch because he wound up going around all over the world on stages and was offering people money to ride the backwards bicycle for like 10 feet. Wow. But it's just a nice way to understand neuroplasticity that's fun and enjoying, and I encourage people to watch that. And when I do talks, a lot of times I'll show that up on a screen because it really does, in a very simplistic way, some guy no one's ever heard of has proven neuroplasticity. And so check out the backwards bicycle. It's in Australia. I'm assuming it will come up when you search it, but it's worth taking a look at.
Well, one thing I want to bring up I know we're running out of time here, but before we get done, John is going to be a guest speaker for Agile, Access's industry conference in Dallas in April. I would encourage all of you who are interested in this to attend Agile. And you can get information on that at access.com/agile, AGILE. John will be one of the featured speakers there, and we're going to talk more about Zing there, and you'll be able to meet John in person.
Yeah, and please, I mean, whether you're in the field or you have a family member, I mean, my cell phone number and email are up thanks to John. Please feel free to reach out. I would happy to help in any way I can or provide more information. So
and zingperformance.com. Zingperformance.com is y'all's website.
Yeah, in fact, it's getting a major overhaul as we speak because a lot of these new programs that we've been testing and we've done over the last 18 months will now be up. Nice. So it's getting an overhaul, and quite honestly, I'm not a big fan of our current site. So, but if you want all information on what we're doing and please reach out, and I'll make sure that you get what you need. We have tons of data, tons of materials, tons of publications. We have 26 years of stuff. Yeah.
John, thank you so much for your time today. I've learned so much. I'll always leave happy from a podcast, but I'm leaving kind of excited today. Like I have stuff that I need to start looking into for my own life. So I learned a lot today. Thank you so much. Arlene, thank you as always. It's an honor and a privilege to get to be beside you virtually.
Thank you, John.
Guys,
again, I'll take that same exit on the next one.
John, you were amazing. We do really appreciate you. Guys, we will be back next Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll be sending out some information. But right now, if you could take the time to subscribe, like, and share this episode or past episodes, Arlene and I would very much appreciate it. And we want to get everybody aware about John McGuire and Zing Performance, and we can only do it with your help. But we will be back next week. But until then, we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.